Chapter 12. The night air was thick with tension as Ethan and Daniel crouched behind the crumbling remains of an old storefront, their breath coming in shallow gasps. The once bustling city now stood in eerie silence, save for the occasional distant echo of boots against the pavement. The Global Unification Initiative patrols were out in full force tonight. Ethan signaled to Daniel to stay low, his heart hammering against his ribs. They had to move fast. They had spent the last 2 days hiding in the underground shelter with their neighbors and other believers, but supplies were running low, and they needed to scout a new escape route. Staying in one place for too long was dangerous. A sudden flash of light swept through the alleyway, the sharp glare of a search drone passing overhead. Ethan yanked Daniel down just in time, pressing his son close as the humming of the machine hovered above them. The drone lingered. Ethan clenched his jaw. Please, God, don't let it scan us. After a long, agonizing moment, the drone finally drifted away, its sensor sweeping the other side of the street. Daniel exhaled shakily. That was too close. Ethan nodded, eyes scanning their surroundings. We need to get out of here, now. He grabbed Daniel's wrist and moved quickly, but quietly, sticking to the shadows. They had almost reached an abandoned parking garage when the sound of gunfire cracked through the air. Ethan shoved Daniel behind a burnt-out car just as a group of resistant fighters burst from a nearby alleyway, pursued by armed GUI enforcers. Chaos erupted. A woman in tattered clothes fired wildly over her shoulder, taking down one of the enforcers before a bullet found her leg, sending her crashing to the ground with a scream. Ethan's gut twisted. He knew better than to get involved. He had a son to protect. But Daniel's wide eyes were locked on the woman, his hands clenched into fists. "Dad," he whispered, urgency in his voice. Ethan swore under his breath. We can't just leave her. He made his decision in an instant. "Cover me," he ordered Daniel, pulling his knife from his belt. He darted out from their hiding spot, weaving through the chaos, and grabbed the woman under her arms. "Can you run?" he asked urgently. She winced, shaking her head. Bullets ripped through the air around them. Ethan gritted his teeth and hoisted her up. Then hold on. With every muscle in his body screaming, he dragged her toward Daniel, who had already scouted a path through the parking garage. "Go!" Ethan ordered. Daniel sprinted ahead, leading the way up the concrete ramps. The woman gasped in pain, her weight growing heavier in Ethan's arms. He forced himself to keep going. The gunfire was getting closer. A deafening boom shattered the night as an explosion rocked the street below, sending flames roaring through the sky. The enforcers were closing in. Ethan cursed. They weren't going to make it. And then, out of the shadows, over here. Ethan turned to see a man stepping from a hidden passageway near the back of the garage. He recognized him instantly. Pastor Robert Hayes. "Move!" Hayes shouted. "Now!" Without hesitation, Ethan and Daniel followed him, slipping into the concealed tunnel just as more drones descended on the area. The hidden door slid shut behind them, cutting off the chaos above. For now, they were safe. Celeste stood in the dimly lit corridor of the Global Unification Initiative headquarters, her pulse pounding in her ears. The weight of what she had agreed to do pressed down on her like chains wrapped around her soul. Adrian had given her an order: infiltrate the resistance, earn their trust, destroy them. She wanted to survive. She wanted to be on the right side of power. But why did it feel like she was selling her soul to do it? She forced herself to keep walking, her heels echoing against the cold marble floor as she entered the surveillance room. Large screens flickered with live footage from the city, tracking the movements of suspected rebels. "Anything new?" she asked the officer in charge. He pointed to one of the screens. "We tracked a firefight in the South District. Some resistance members were either killed or escaped. But get this, Ethan Matthews and his son were spotted. Celeste's stomach clenched. Where? They slipped away into an underground passage before we could capture them. Her mind raced. They're still alive. Adrian would not like that. Do we have any leads on where they went? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The officer shook his head. Not yet, but we will. Celeste nodded, forcing a smile. Good. Keep me updated. She turned on her heel and strode away, her heart hammering. She had to make a choice soon, and she wasn't sure she was ready for it, what it would cost her. Adrian Lucero sat in his private office, fingers steepled in thought. The reports were troubling. Ethan Matthews had escaped, again. That man was proving to be more of a nuisance than expected. But his mind wasn't entirely on the Matthews family tonight. It was on Celeste Warren. He leaned back in his chair, watching the security feed that displayed her walking through the corridors. She was beautiful, fiercely intelligent, ruthless when necessary, and loyal. At least she'd been loyal so far. But there was something in her lately, a hesitation, a reluctance to embrace what needed to be done. Adrian drummed his fingers on the desk. He wasn't just drawn to Celeste because she was useful. There was something about her that intrigued him, something he wanted to possess outside of the GUI's agenda. Power was intoxicating, but it was lonely at the top. Celeste could be the exception, the one who stood beside him, not because she feared him, but because she wanted to. He smirked. He just had to make sure she made the right choice. From the realm of heaven, Claire watched the events on earth unfold, the spiritual battle raging unseen around them. Angels stood as sentinels over the believers in hiding, their swords gleaming with divine fire. But the forces of darkness were relentless, their claws reaching, their whispers growing louder. She saw Ethan and Daniel, their bodies weary, but their spirits unbroken. She saw Celeste standing at the edge of a decision that would define her eternity. And she saw Adrian, his heart blackened by the power he craved. His soul was a battlefield of its own. Claire turned to the angel beside her. Can they win? The angel's gaze was steady. Victory is already written, but the war must be fought. Claire closed her eyes and whispered a prayer. For Ethan, for Daniel, for Celeste.